Hello, Mukara. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure and an honor to have you here in this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
It's an honor, and I have loved reconnecting with you and just enjoying our memories of the past and creating new happenings in the present and the future.
Exactly. So I'm very happy to do that with you as well. Many people whom I have worked with have heard about you and your work, but some who might be here might not have heard about it yet. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction.
Oh, please.
Mukara is amazing. She works with groups like probably no one else I've seen. She has devoted her life to bringing human values into organizations, to connecting people to form real groups, to bring fairness, to bring success to companies, and above all, to make our day-to-day lives meaningful inside and out of work. So about 20 years ago, a little more, Mukara launched MatrixWorks, her company, her enterprise. And she's been updating her work frequently, of course, so always introducing cutting edge neuroscience and all types of different techniques and skills. She's done work, of course, in the US, that's where she is right now, in Brazil, where we met years ago, in Canada, where I am right now, which is great, and in China as well. She's done a lot of work in China. So, Mukara, I know that it's very hard to introduce you in such a short period of time. So if there's anything you would like to add, please go ahead.
Well, I guess I would just say that this quote from, I believe it's Khalil Gibran, has been a motivator for me. And it says that work is love made visible. And so whatever our projects, whatever our work, I think if we can use it as a vehicle for remembering and honoring the basic goodness of all of us. And that's particularly important, I think, in the times that we're living. So.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. And thank you for that beautiful quote. I believe that, everything we do with love just has so much more meaning and so much more impact. Mm-hmm. Love is the base. It's what we all need, right? Mm-hmm. And so our theme today is like, how are we going? So we're exploring a few tips here to turn chaos to creativity, and to build a new world, right? We're in the midst of a great transformation here. So how is it that we can do that? This is what we came here to talk a little bit about. So I see we have a couple of comments here already. So please bring your questions, bring your comments. I'll try to keep up here with all the text on my left side. So this is what I'm looking at. And otherwise, we'll take a quick look more towards the end and make sure we catch every question. So please make sure to bring your questions and comments. It'll add a lot to our transmission.
So, Chris, one of the things I think that is essential in these times as we try to build a new world is that we start with ourselves. And so I'd like to invite us into a very brief centering, just online and with you and myself, just to take a moment to really arrive and settle and feel our bodies, invite a quality of relaxation, perhaps take a couple of breaths, and just settle into capacity to really hear and to be present with all of our senses and our good intention. And then we can begin. So that's the first thing, I think, is we take time and we allow ourselves to really become present in the present moment. And beyond, next comes a lot of things, but that's the beginning. And any comments from you?
Yes, being present makes all the difference in the quality of everything we do. I think that when we talk about chaos, we know that in today's world, we have so many distractions and chaos is all around us. And it's so easy to jump from this to that, to that, to that. And I'm here and I'm thinking about something else. So
Right.
I personally feel that every time I'm able to recenter and to be truly present for those with whom I'm talking, all of you here, it just makes all the difference in the world. And it doesn't matter if it's a conversation or something we're doing or work or an intervention, being present just brings quality to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm glad we were able to model that for our participants.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now, would you like to discuss these magical tips, or where would you like to go?
We can. We could, start by talking about intention. So you talked about intention when you talked about us perceiving ourselves and being here, and what is our intention for today, here and now. Do you want to explore a little bit about that?
And I invite anyone who's listening to us to think about your intent, their intention for being here. But I believe my intention is to really model one of what I think is the most essential principles for transforming chaos into creativity. And that is to really be willing to follow signs. Yeah, it's almost like being willing to see and to follow the breadcrumbs. And I'd like to just talk about us, if that's okay. Yeah, because it was so sweet. So we haven't been in touch for a while, but we shared a lot in Brazil, and there was a fondness and a respect for each other. And as I understand it, you received my newsletter. Mm-hmm. And you thought, wow, well, I wonder if I could make contact with Mukara. And so you wrote to me and you said, would you like to do a live transmission? And I wrote back and said, of course. And you said, oh my God, because maybe you didn't think I'd say yes. I don't know. And here we are. Yeah. And it was such a good example of one thing leading to another thing, and something happening that, I wasn't thinking I would become in contact with you, much less do a transmission. And you probably didn't have that written in some book, that you would do that. But we listened and we paid attention to the breadcrumbs. Yeah. And here we are. And in a time of chaos, I think it's one of the most useful skills. We pause, we listen, and then we act if it feels right. And who knows what will come from this? Maybe I'll come to Canada or you'll come to Boulder. But here we are. So that's my first offering.
It's really good to reconnect. And it's exactly what it was. I was like, oh, maybe we could, it doesn't hurt asking. And
exactly.
Here we are. And one of the things that I love about working with you, Mukara, is that you always have this, how can I say, intention of making things positive for everyone who is involved. And that is always present in wherever you are, right? It's your awareness of what's important for each individual. And perhaps you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I remember, I don't know if you were present, but there was a time when we were at Dree's school. And it was a whole school. We had the janitors and the teachers and the students and everybody. And we orchestrated just this whole program wherein everybody participated and everybody received something. And there was this feeling of goodness, and nobody was up and nobody was down. Nobody was in, nobody was out. There was this sense of wholeness. And when that can happen and people can have a felt sense of belonging that comes from that deep inclusion, then I think that it's so motivating, and people that turns into the elixir that results in high performance, whatever your role is in the organization. You can be the head of it, you can be a parent of the children, but you want to bring your best. So that's why, for me, paying attention to all levels of a system, regardless of role, creates a feeling of family. And that's satisfying.
And that connection makes so much more difference because it gives people a sense of belonging. And they really truly belong. They belong to that team. And regardless of what their role is, yes, it's got to be good for everyone, right? So when I've been in environments where someone would win, and then someone would have to lose for someone else to win, right, it just never seems, things just don't seem to flow because it's a constant competition and the winner takes it all. Let me put it this way, right? When compared to a place where we're looking really at a balance as to where is it that we can provide an environment for people to give their best contribution, to exercise their roles to the best of their ability in a cooperative way, and everyone wins together. And I believe that adds to a much higher sort of a better result. Right. Not how to put this in words, but
yeah. And I haven't watched to see if there's data more recent, but the last Gallup poll around employee satisfaction or dissatisfaction in the world was that 86% of employees were dissatisfied. I don't know how anything happens with 86% being dissatisfied, and it may have gotten higher than that. So we have to, in this time of the pandemic and the opportunity to really make some changes and to try some experiments, that we have to look at what will bring satisfaction. And I think, regardless of role, something that brings really potent satisfaction is a sense of belonging and being able to be oneself. Yeah, so it's belonging and autonomy. And when they're in balance, you will have a stellar team or group or organization.
Yeah. When you talk about people feeling comfortable in being themselves, or me feeling comfortable about just being myself, with all my imperfections, right? With all my idealized me, the person I want to be, and the person that I sometimes am that I would prefer not to have behaved that way or said it that way. But it's who we are. Yeah. We are in the pursuit of being everything that we would like to be. And if I'm sitting in an environment where I am accepted for who I am, and I'm being challenged and yet supported by people who are in this environment, which is something you talk a lot about, right? If I'm able to balance that, and I'd like for you to talk about that, I am able to offer my contribution and feel good about myself, even though I may have had undesirable behavior here and there, but I will have the group to accept me for who I am and help me to become who I want to become.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't mean I'm not going to make my effort. I'm always going to make my best effort. But if I fall, I don't want people laughing at me. I want people giving me a hand to help me get up, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about this challenging and support?
Well, I think what I would say, and you express it very well, but I guess I would want to name that some of the studies that have been done around high-performing people and teams, I believe it was called the Aristotle study at Google, and they looked at teams for, 2 to 3 years, and they tried to figure out what made the difference. One would be high-performing and the others not. They looked at age, they looked at sex, they looked at time with the company, they looked at every possible variable. And they finally came up with this one thing, and it's continued to be proven as true. And that was that people on the team, of the high performing teams, had this sense of psychological safety. They felt a sense of belonging, but they also could be themselves with all their perfections without fear of being shamed or blamed if they expressed a different opinion. So it's a simple thing. Yeah, I could just say, well, you say yes, but I don't think so. But that makes the difference in whether a collection of individuals in a group can actually become a team. That balance of belonging and of autonomy. It's okay to be a part of, and it's okay to have my own opinions. And when that is available, it's unstoppable. So that's what I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. And it doesn't surprise me that it came from Google, because innovation has to come from this place. Because if everyone can only have one type of opinion, where is innovation going to come from?
Right. Yeah.
So every time we sort of give a crazy idea, we sometimes feel that we might become the outcast. Because
exactly. Yeah. And there are many examples of that. Yeah, that have been, pretty disastrous. We don't have to go into them, but just to say that if we don't feel free to speak up, then we're not really giving everything. And we want to give everything. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, if we want to have a diversity of opinions and form something richer, we need to give that space for people where it's safe to think different. And that reminds me of a concept you talk a lot about, Mukara, which is group genius.
Yeah. Well, it's such an interesting phenomena to be a part of a group that, say, meets over time, or maybe it's just in a weekend class, but there is often a moment when something happens, and I don't know what the something is, but it's like there's a larger and deeper experience of how everyone present is connected to each other. So I tend to call that a direct experience of interconnectedness. And spirituality says that at the core we're all connected, and now science is saying at the core of the quantum we're all connected. So maybe there's something to it, but to have a direct experience of that in a group, I think it changes everything. I think it shifts the energetic field in the group. And then I think that acts back on each individual, that they can feel more their belonging and more their sense of wholeness. And then they can give back to the group. So it's a magical process. And I think in these times that we're going to find a lot of answers if we include looking at the individual, but we keep a sharp eye on the collective and how the collective can support the individual and the individual can contribute to the collective. So maybe it starts with each of us working on our own consciousness, our own shadows, our own imperfections, and then through the work with groups and the larger consciousness, we can begin to contribute to how groups can be a force for good and a force for change and for creating a new world. That's what I want.
Yes, let's hope for that. And I think all of us are seeing a little bit of that happening in the world, where I would say here in North America, it's always been more common that competitors, for example, have meetings and collaborate and exchange ideas about how to straighten an industry altogether and work together collaboratively. But having worked here and having worked in other places of the world, I know that sometimes not everywhere is like this, or not every industry everywhere. Maybe some industries are, right? And I'm seeing now more than ever. I've been connected with like a few restaurants in Brazil, for example, and I'm seeing such a beautiful movement of restaurants pulling together to understand how it is that they're going to make an amazing experience when they are able to return to what we're calling the new normal. And just like them, there are many small groups of collaboration appearing on, it's so easy nowadays through social media. There's lots of philanthropy going on. There's lots of exchanging ideas, content being displayed. So I'm very hopeful for this new type of connection and what it can generate.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is happening. And I think if we pay attention to the little experiments that are happening, and then we somehow find a way to understand what else we can do, and we keep orienting toward little experiments and linking together with people that share our ideas. So I wonder if you want to check and see if there's a question before we launch into more information. Anything that you would want us to pay attention to?
Let me scroll back up here. So no questions for now, just a few comments. I heard so much about you, Mukara. So great to see you together. That's Dri who introduced us. And sometimes it's very difficult to be present in the to be in the present moment. That's Alceiza who says that. So maybe we can explore a little bit about that. This is what we have for now.
Yeah. Well, I think that the practice of being fully present is helped if we can even take 10 or 15 minutes a day and just simply sit with ourselves and notice what's happening in our bodies. Just being with ourselves without the distraction of Facebook, email, or TV, anything. Just really, letting ourselves be our object of attention. And then, a simple mindfulness practice can help us develop the capacity to be comfortable and to enjoy being present in the moment.
Yeah, so I've been practicing meditation now for 6 years, almost every day, which is great. I'm so grateful for it. If I had known, I would have started.
Yeah, right.
I would have had a choice. But basically, I remember, Mukara, before that, you would suggest that we did 2 minutes of just staying quiet before starting a meeting or before starting a practice or something. And I adopted that, and I suggested that to teams and groups I've worked with. And for some people, it was so interesting. They said, this is the calmest I have felt in many years. It's just putting a timer and just sitting there and breathing. And if you think that's okay, but just doing that for 2 minutes and arriving, just centering yourself.
Yeah. It reminds me of the sweetest story. And again, this is Dri's school that we both worked at, but that there was a teacher who was teaching 4-year-olds. And so she was instituting this 2 minutes. And one day, I guess she was busy and maybe a little bit scattered. And so the teacher tells the story of this little girl coming up to her and pulling on her skirt and saying, "Teacher, you forgot the 2 minutes."
And they're so wise, right?
It's like they know.
That's great. That's a great little story.
Well, Chris, I think I would like to focus on some of, if it's all right with you, some of the specific things that we've talked about as tips. And I'd like to, we'll go over the list that we've come up with, but I think the one that we were talking about before we went live is what I'd like for people to remember. And so this is the big one, and the others are like, try them if you can, but it's that I think we have the opportunity and maybe the obligation in these chaotic times, in order to help us move into creativity, is to be aware that we actually need to cultivate a new level, a kind of new dynamic balance between will and surrender. That they're like two poles that I think can help us to, whether we have to make a decision about a new project or making a move or a relationship, that there's got to be some element of will or, yeah, just sort of making things happen, but also a new level of allowing and of surrender. And I don't know how to tell people exactly how to do it, but I want to put it in front of them that these are both necessary components of transforming chaos into creativity. So how does that, what would you add to that? How does that sound?
Okay, so it sounds wonderful, and if you allow me to just share it, maybe from a bit of my experience with that, because I'm strong-willed. People who know me know that I'm very proactive, and I like to make things happen, right?
Yeah.
And when I took the first course with Mukara long ago, I started to reflect. She answered a lot of questions with a good old "I don't know."
Yes.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
Because she would say, I'm curious to see what will flow. I'm curious to see what the group has to say. I'm curious. And she would just let it appear and let it flow. And I later took another course with Robert Dilts and Richard Moss on presence coaching. And they also used a lot of I don't knows, and it continued to intrigue me, right? And little by little, I learned to exercise. Just that's great. I have an intention.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily always have to make it happen, because if I go too strong on my will,
yes,
I may just close the spectrum of possibilities that could flow from that moment.
exactly.
And I may just be killing a possibility that would be on this side of the spectrum that could even be better,
right?
Not only for me, but for the entire group involved, or for the world, or for whatever we're talking about. So it's a little bit about having your will, having your intention, acting upon it, but also letting things flow and letting things happen without having to control every step. Does that?
Yeah, no, that's very concrete and very helpful. And I think it is about honoring the power of I don't know. Yeah. And then being sensitive and receptive to what wants to happen. What is wanting to emerge. And that, I think, is needed almost as a daily practice in these chaotic times, that it will give us almost like the guardrails of support and safety when, things are dissolving at a pretty rapid rate, at least in the US. And, I think Canada's a little better. I think you're a little better off, but I know the U.S. and Brazil and even China, where I'm in touch with them a lot, and there's a lot of struggle there too. So in these times of chaos and dissolution and the opportunity to rebuild, can we hold the space for a new balance between will and surrender? And maybe it's different every day. Maybe some days are more letting go and some days are more holding the line. But whatever pole we're most comfortable with, we want to invite the other and not get captured by either the pole of will or the pole of surrender. So that would be the one thing I would want people to take away from our talk today.
And just bringing it to our consciousness, right? Whether if we're more on the will side or if we're allowing ourselves to surrender and just trying to find that balance that allows
finding a balance, and it will change. But I know we talked about, I think we called them the reminders. And if you look at your list, what stands out to you as something to share next with people?
I like the part where, well, we talked a little about a bit about intention. So just trying to get things to be good for me and for you and for everyone. And then secondly, listening well to deeply resonate, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think that's probably, especially with what's happening in the U.S. around race and having to really face in terms of my participation, both in my own company of MatrixWorks, and I'm a trainer in the Hakomi methodology, so I'm a member of that organization. And we have a lot that we need to we need to listen a lot to people of color and make some changes in our curriculum and in our approach to things and just our awareness of race. And I grew up in the South, and so there's a tendency in me and I was always pro, integration, and I tend to, I think I've said to myself, well, it's not a problem for me. I'm not complicit in this. But the more I learn about it and the more I really listen to people who are living that reality, the more I know that in my teaching, in my organization, in my interaction in the world, I need to listen. I need to just be quiet and listen and feel what it is like for people of color in the United States. So that's where I think the listening can come in, and I can contribute by just being quiet and listening, and then taking guidance from people for whom this is a lived experience, and changing the way I offer trainings that include a bigger view of what institutionalized racism does. And I feel the energy's just gotten really heavy. I'm sorry, but it needs to come up.
I think it's such a valid point. I think that listening and trying to understand is all we can do, right? And listening to all sides of this equation. And you always say, like, when we talk about resonating, it goes beyond listening. It's like really trying to feel.
Yeah.
I listen and I try to feel what you feel, and I try to take in. Yeah. And sometimes when we ask and we listen, the truth will come out. And the truth sometimes is easy to digest, and oftentimes it's not so easy. Mm-hmm. And what do you have to say about that?
Well, I think it's a truth that you name, and it just reminds me that true healing happens when a person feels heard, held, felt, and loved. And so I think just the feeling of really being listened to, really being heard, without deflecting the truth, that what, as a white person of privilege, I have been complicit in. And if I can if it's offered to me with the sense of it wasn't my intention, but it was the impact, then I can digest it and metabolize it, and then find a way to choose a new behavior and a new attitude toward this issue of racism.
And it has a lot to do with how the truth is put, right? How the truth is said. Because if we're taking as as the base for our communication, that it has to be good for both,
Yeah.
then I am trying to speak my truth to you so you can feel how I feel, or you can
Yeah.
feel what I feel. And you're doing this in a way that is not necessarily, I'm not blaming you, I'm not pointing my finger at you, I'm just trying to say, Mukara, listen to me.
Yeah.
Although your intentions have always been this, the impact of your actions over my reality are different from what your first intention was. So what can we do about this, right? And how can we get past this and working in collaboration where one is listening to the other, and we're both open to change our ways of thinking and communicating and behaving, but we're doing it with a lot of kindness, right?
Yeah, I guess I just, again, taking myself as a person who's wanting to be more, I don't know, just more aware, that if I can sense that a person of color who's giving me feedback also can hold the notion that I may have been stupid, but I'm a good person. I want to be a good person. Then that's going to allow me to stay in relationship. And this is what, I think is really important. I want to take a risk here. There's a beautiful little exercise, and I do bring this into trainings, but it's very short, and I'd like us to do it if it's okay with you.
Absolutely.
And the author of this is, I think her name is Ruth Hill, and she does teach about race. And we say the same thing to each other, and sometimes I'll have the whole group say it to each other, but I'll do it first to you, and then you can to me. So, Chris, if I didn't belong with you, I would not have come. And if you didn't belong with me, you would not have come. My heart and your heart are very old friends. And then you would say the same to me.
Taking it in, thank you. Mukara, if I didn't belong with you, I wouldn't have come. And if you didn't belong with me, you wouldn't have come. Your heart and my heart are very old friends. Thank you.
And that's that's a way of acknowledging a deeper truth. Yeah. That if we're in the space of the other, there must be something. And if we can remember that our hearts are very old friends, then we can take care and alter the things that need to be altered. I don't know, I'm thinking about Brazil, and it's always been my experience, or my assumption, that rather than a race problem so much in Brazil has more of a class problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's accurate, but whether it's race or class or some combination of race and class.
Absolutely. It is more of a social matter than a race matter. Absolutely. And it also has the space, and it might tie in with a question from Dre here. She's asking if you could talk a little bit more about chaos as an opportunity for connection and consciousness.
Yeah, well, Dre knows the MatrixWorks model, and this model says that there are 3 stages that we go through as a group and as individuals in order to become this living system. And the first level is the connection. And this is about belonging and establishing safety. And when there's enough of that, we enter into a state of where there's a disequilibrium. It's chaos, and it can be creative, and it can be wonderful, or, unhealthy. But in this state of chaos, what is necessary is that we understand it as a normal, natural process in group life. It's where we're individuating. It's where I'm different from you. Yeah, we're both women, but it's more a time when autonomy sort of comes into the foreground. And if we have worked connection and if we work the chaos in a group, then what happens is a third phase, which is a phase of a higher level of consciousness that understands that, yes, we belong together and autonomy is important. And yes, we can be connected and sometimes we need to differentiate. So the higher level consciousness is what I think is trying to be born from this experience of chaos in the outer world. So ask Dri if that's enough.
Dri, we'll wait for her answer here. And then we have another question, but let me just comment on that. It's so interesting how we're all going through the same thing worldwide, right?
Yes, yes.
So interesting. And yet each of us in a very unique way. So I think, recognizing our individuality also sort of helps us to be distant enough from each other that we continue to see each other.
Yes.
Because if we're too close like this,
right,
we might not be able to see each other anymore to the point that we can recognize that what happens to you, even though we're part of the same group, I might be experiencing it differently.
Right.
And that enriches that third phase of the connection where a higher intelligence and connectivity comes into place, right?
Right. And I've often thought that after the consciousness has matured and has opened new possibilities, that is when true creativity starts to become available to us. And I think that's what we're longing for as we recreate systems and a world that works for all of us and that is fair and equitable and reflects the basic goodness that we are and that we have.
Absolutely. I have another question from Heidi here, if I can read it for you. So she's asking, is it possible to develop a person to deliver value, fraternity, etc., and not simply deliver a regular work once there is no value inside of him or her? As Plato said, my mother was an excellent midwife, but she could not get a woman who was not pregnant to give birth. Even under this pandemic, do you believe people are having their mindset changed? Or is it an impression good people are improving themselves and bad, which she puts between brackets, people are getting worse?
Wow, that's quite a question. So I'm going to try to feel that and see what comes. Wish I could talk to Heidi personally and get a little more information. I don't know that it feels true to me to make a generalization that good people are getting more good and bad are getting more bad. I think that people with a certain orientation to presence, to awareness, to consciousness are taking this pandemic as an opportunity to give birth to something new. We don't know what, we don't know. We're in the birth canal, we're struggling, but that we're orienting toward this is an opportunity for the big transition, into the world that we all know is possible. And I think that people who are more constricted in their consciousness or views may be struggling more Whereas I think Chris, you and myself, and I don't know who else is on the call, but we're making a choice to see this as an invitation to something, to new possibilities, to transformation, and to a world that works for all of us. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm signing up to try to do my part. And that's what I feel about you, that you want to do your part.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very well put when you talk about the generalizations. And I believe that this is a great opportunity too for us to extend a hand to someone who might not have been too prone. Since everyone's just stopping to reflect and everything, we can't really change someone's value unless they want to widen a belief around something, right? Mm-hmm. So if I have had a very tough life experience since I was a child, let's say I was deprived of love and security or even any basic needs, if I had that life, I will have a different belief towards life and towards people than a person who has grown up with a different story, right? Yeah. So this is such a great time with compassion for us to maybe offer them a hand and show them. You say a phrase sometimes when you're leading meditation, Mukara, that resonates a lot with me, and I remember it touched me deeply. When you first said it, I was meditating, and then you said, you were born in a world of love.
Yes.
And if we can just show them that they were born in the world of love, if I can just, sometimes I'm walking and I pass by a street person and I just look them in the eye and I say, good morning.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yes.
I smile at you. It's little things like this. And of course we can go a lot further in a moment so chaotic as this. And maybe we can motivate them to widen their beliefs. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know if we can teach values, but I think we can show people more than what they have seen so far, sometimes through our actions, right?
Yeah, and I like what you say a lot, because I do think it starts with the small gestures, and it starts with you seeing the person on the street as a real human being and looking them in the eye and saying good morning. And that, can make a lot of difference. We never know, what kind of lifeline a simple gesture can be. But I support what you said, and I hope you continue doing that. And, I said to my husband and I went out to buy some groceries in Boulder, and on every corner there was somebody asking for help. This is Boulder, Colorado. So I'm sure that in other cities the same thing is true. So how do we respond? And sometimes it's, just a smile and seeing them as a human. Sometimes it's a more concrete response. But anyway, I know we're getting close to the end of our time. And is there anything else? Well, yeah, there's one other one I'd like a little reminder. And this is more from a systems perspective. And that is to pay attention in a group, in a family, in an organization, that there is a balance of giving and receiving. Yeah, that workers aren't asked to always be doing the producing or the giving and not receiving adequate pay. And if a system is not balanced in terms of giving and receiving or support and challenge, then it won't be healthy. As human beings, we're a living system, and we need this. We need to feel like we receive love and affection and, money, whatever, and we want to give, we want to contribute. And those need to be in a state of balance in a family and in an organization. And the role of support and challenge, I think, is really critical in these chaotic times, that we need to remember it is our it's our privilege and responsibility to keep resourcing ourselves, to keep paying attention to, are we sleeping well? Are we eating nutritious food? Are we moving our bodies? Are we doing those things that will optimize our ability to be present? So paying attention to supporting ourselves and then challenging ourselves. Like, what was I thinking? One of the teachers that I spent some time with, Thomas Hubel, who does a lot of work with collective trauma, and he has this little 10-day meditation challenge. And so we're all going to be doing these extra little things for 10 days. So that's a little challenge, you know. My life is pretty full, but I like the challenge. So okay, that's it for me. How would you like to complete?
I love that about challenging and supporting. When we challenge ourselves, also being able to support ourselves. When we're challenging each other, also being there to support each other. If it's actually amazing. One last point before we end that I would like to see if you could talk about, Mukara, is another reminder, which is, okay, once we agree upon something, so I agree with you, I'm going to show up, count on me, I'll be there, as prepared as I can be.
Yeah.
Right? So talk a little bit about that type of maturity, about being an adult.
Being an adult and being able to keep agreements and to be accountable. And if I say I'm going to be on time, I'll do my best to be on time. And I think, at least, I don't know about Canada, but in Brazil, I've noticed that, time is not something that is very precise. And, I've had to learn to soften my own attitudes about that, but also encourage people. So now we have a training, our second training in Brazil, and people come on time. And, I think that's great. So how to keep including accountability as a part of mature leadership. That if I know I can count on you and you can count on me, there's a level of trust that will get us through hard times. And if I can't be on time, I'm going to call you. And I'm going to say, Chris, I need a few more minutes. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. And the same from you to me. So I think that it's not, it's a part of maturity. Mm-hmm. To be responsible and accountable. And I want to propagate that, especially in these times.
100%. And it ties into speaking the truth, because if I can't be there at 3, then I shouldn't schedule with you at 3. I should be able to, talk to you about this in a constructive and positive manner. Or if I don't feel prepared to take a part of a project or something, I should be able to. You're challenging me, and you can also support me, or maybe you can't. Chris, so I'll do this part, and what else can you do? Yeah. And it's about biting what you can chew, mm-hmm. not on the comfort zone. Just mm-hmm. always, challenging yourself, but being able to say, well, I'm not 100% of how I will do this, but, can you support me a little bit here, or can I ask you a few questions? And once you clarify that to me, we're in agreement, and I will deliver my part. And that's where accountability comes into place, where I'm being an adult, right? And I know that I am going to deliver my part, and you're going to deliver your part. So I think all these little concepts we talked about, they tie in together. Right? They interconnect, and it sort of forms an attitude altogether that can help us move from chaos into creating the world we want to see, and starting with ourselves, like I said, right?
And really calling forth the transformation of chaos into a level of creativity that is very nourishing, mm-hmm. And meets the needs of everyone. So this has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed. I hope people have some inspiration for working with the chaos in a creative way, and in taking personal responsibility for moving into a state of consciousness that is more life affirming.
Mukara, thank you so very much for your time and your valuable and really insightful reflections. It's been great as usual. What can I say? I'm so glad I did send you that message and asked you to do a live transmission, and thank you for agreeing to it.
It's been a lot of fun, and I hope it's useful for people, and I'd love to stay in touch with you, and let's see what else we can create.
Absolutely. It's a world of possibilities. So we are going to post this video on our YouTube channel. It's also going to be here on Facebook. We're going to post all of Mukara's contacts as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me, message her. She's tagged on this event. But other than that, if you have further questions or reflections, feel free to send them our way. And wishing everyone a fantastic week, and let's start to build that new world.
Okay, much love.
Thank you.
Okay, much love.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.